Hey everyone. Today there are a lot of different conversations around artificial intelligence and generative AI and copilots, and it can get a little bit confusing about, well, what is the right AI technology to use for my different use cases? So in this video, I want to try and just walk through what are some of the key types of Microsoft offered AI solutions and when I might use them. Now, if we think of artificial intelligence, this is not a new thing. If we traditionally think of AI, it's the idea that a computer is emulating some human behavior. So if I think about, well, what are the things that I can do as a human? Well, I can see things and I can tell you, hey, this picture has a tree in it, a car in it. I could tell you where in the picture the tree and the car is. I can do object detection. I could read text from it. So if I think about artificial intelligence and some of the things we're used to, well, we have different types of vision services. As a human, I can do speech. So we have speech capabilities. I can make decisions. So we have decision-making capabilities. I can translate, maybe. I can't do that very well, but some people can. And there's a number of different ones all around this, but primarily we think about there is some input, and then from that input, what the AI can do is it can make a prediction, it can do a classification, and it does it with a certain confidence level. But it's primarily acting on some existing information. Now we think of this brand new set of AIs, which is all about generative AI. And as the name suggests, the idea of the generative is it is creating new content. Now, this can be text-based. This can be images, it can be videos, it's creating songs that we see happening today. So there's a whole set of these capabilities where it's now not just acting on existing data and making some prediction, although in a way it really is. It's seemingly being very creative and creating text, creating stories, poems, scripts, summarizing things, creating a picture based on a description. And this ability to generate new content for us really has revolutionized the AI that we are seeing in a more widely adopted consumer and corporate types of framework. And this is what I want to focus on, these generative AI-backed services, and what are they being offered as? What are the copilots? What is Copilot Studio? What is Azure AI Studio and Windows AI Studio? I want to go through all of those different things. Now, what's really important when we think about this, when we talk about generative AI, you'll often hear the term large language model, which is generally the idea of a set of AI that's using a transformer architecture to enable natural language tasks. And that's what we're seeing with these. You'll see, if you've ever seen a demo, that I'm interacting in a very natural language way. I'm not having to be very strict about what I say and the words I use. And I get a very natural language response back. We have tests to try and work out, can we even tell it's a computer anymore? So we have these large language models, and very commonly what we're seeing today is GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which is one of the more popular LLMs that's really geared towards that generating content. But I do want to stress, it is not the only one, and you'll hear about OpenAI. It is not the only solution out there. If I jump over for a second, and actually, if I just go and look at Azure AI Studio, now all I'm looking at right now in Azure AI Studio is I'm simply focusing on the idea of chat completion. And we'll see these GPTs, GPT-4 is very popular. There's also 3.5, 3.5 Turbo, 4 Turbo, but they're ones from OpenAI, sure, but there are others as well. Mistral, Llama, which is an open source large language model, and there are many others. And if I change the type of task I wanted, and we can see down here on the little bar, it's got all the different types of tasks, we'll see there are a lot of different models available to us. So don't think, oh, it's just GPT from OpenAI. It's not that at all. There's a massive number of these large language models. It's just we hear a lot about the OpenAI, and Microsoft have teamed very heavily with OpenAI, working on the OpenAI GPT, but Microsoft also have their own models that they're working on with Microsoft Research. There's a huge number of the third parties that Microsoft also offer those through different services. So you're not just thinking, oh, there's only OpenAI GPT. It just happens to be there's a close partnership, and they've built a number of their solutions on that GPT. And so we are going to focus primarily on the OpenAI GPT, which is currently version 4, is the latest one. But even within that, they create slightly newer versions of the model that's been trained on newer data that maybe has new token limits. And those terms will make more sense as we go through the video. But you will still see 3.5 used. And you may wonder, well, if there's a 4, why would I ever bother with a previous version? Realize, as the models get newer, typically that means they've got bigger. They have more parameters, which you can almost think about as imagine neurons in your brain that connect together to enable our brain to work and do stuff. Well, in the AI terms, you have these parameters, which are different values. You have biases, you have weights in a particular node, and they're all connected together in layers. And the more of those parameters I have, well, the more complicated, the more sophisticated, the more things the model can do. So as these versions go up, they tend to have more and more parameters, hundreds of billions of parameters now. But it means it requires more compute to leverage them. And so if an older version like the 3.5 can do the task we need, it's less computation, less cost, so we'll use it. So that's why you'll still see previous versions, even though there might be a newer one out there. So we're focusing on GPT. And to make it very clear about what this really is, so what OpenAI have done, it means they did the training, they created the model. And so if we talk about those neurons in my brain for a second, so if you think I start out and I have the parameters, but they have no weights, they have no biases. So what we have to do is we want to train the model. And so I need a huge amount of data. And this is the way these work. You feed them in data, and through a series of processes, they modify the different parameters, the weights and the biases on each of these little nodes and the connections between them, which give it its capability. So there's a huge amount of data goes in, and this is the training. And during the training, well, all those little nodes in all those layers, I'm not drawing 100 billion. Nope. But they all kind of connect, and they modify these weightings on how the things work. And once all of that is done, once the training is complete, you end up with your model. So this is OpenAI have been creating in close partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft are providing these massive clusters because the training requires a huge amount of time, a huge amount of data, and just a huge amount of compute, primarily GPUs, because GPUs are very good. You have about tensors. They're very good at performing mathematical operations on these huge arrays of numbers, which is really what all of this is based on. So great, we create this model, and the whole point of what the model is really doing is once we have it, it gets exposed as an API. And what I can do is I, as the user of this solution, I give it my input. Now we call the input the prompt. I'm sending my prompt to the API, And what the API, it then responds. It gives me an output. You might hear this called an inference. And what this is actually doing is it takes my input and then it's predicting the next most likely word. And then the next most likely word after that, because it feeds then that in. And it's just continuing that until it reaches what it considers a completion token. Now, I'm saying words. The reality is it actually breaks it down into something called tokens. Because just words on their own, well, that doesn't work in different languages. That's not ideal. And so it's working on these things called tokens that give me the flexibility to work in multiple languages. It lets me perform mathematical functions on numeric values of these tokens. And so it's representing a part of a word, and we'll come back to that. But the whole point is these models, I give it a prompt, and it's predicting the next token, then the next token, the next token, based on what you gave it and based on the knowledge it has. In a way, that's really all it's doing. So it's all working on these tokens, and it's predicting the next most likely, then the next most likely after that. And it has a whole range of possible outputs, each of them with a certain probability. And there's things you can tweak that maybe make it more imaginative and creative, which says, hey, my tolerance for saying not as likely, it can then start to choose from that. So that's why you see that behavior. That's what it's doing. And we could see this. So if we jump over for a second, now I'm just going to start off with Bing Chat. So this is Copilot in Bing. And it's telling you can ask it anything. Tell me a story about YouTuber John Saville and a dragon named Bob. And I'm just sending it. So that's the prompt. That's not a very good prompt. I don't know what it's going to come out with. But notice the way it's outputting the information. It's doing it almost one word at a time because it's predicting that one word at a time. Then it feeds that word in along with the previous parts and says, well, now what's the next most likely token? And the next one, and the next one, until it reaches what it considers a completion. So it has gone through and it has generated this very imaginative story about John and the flying dragon. And John's recording and laughing and video. I'm going to get away from that pretty quickly. No idea what that says. Don't want to know. But the point is, you see it got the prompt, then it outputted a token at a time. It was generating it. It doesn't understand what we're giving it. It's purely predicting the next most likely token. But based on this massive amount of data, you can almost think of it's not the complete internet and all the books, but just huge amounts of information that make that prediction very intelligent. And how different is that from how we work? I don't know exactly how the human brain works, but are we, when we talk, just predicting, well, this is probably the next word that should come next, and next, and next, and so on. And we can see this tokenization. If I jump over super quickly, just so you get the idea about this, if I enter some text, so the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, you can see it's breaking it down into these various tokens. Now, all of these words are quite common, so it's actually one token for each of my words. That's not always the case. If I type in Oklahoma, we can see here Oklahoma was actually 3 different tokens because Oklahoma is not one of those base words that it understands. And so this is what actually gets passed in, and this is what's coming out of it. And this is where we start paying attention, because you may say, well, why do we even care about these tokens at all? And it's because a lot of times when we use these capabilities, we pay for the number of input tokens and we pay for the number of output tokens. And also there are limits. There's a limit on how many tokens we can send in and how many can send out. So we want to be respectful and think about, well, let's only send it what we need, especially when we start adding additional data into it. Now, one of the things we have here, and this looks fantastic, but realize, what is this doing then? We give it a prompt and it gives us an output. But that means on its own, the only thing it can actually do is inference based on that set of training data it was given, which is vast, but that's supposed to be a book, by the way. It's vast, but it's up to the point of time the model was trained, and it's only on what it was trained on. And then that's all it can do. It has no idea of any other types of information. And often we want more. If I think about how do we use this and what do I need from it, well, I want it to be able to use additional, so external data. My mailbox, my calendar, this PowerPoint I'm working on, the internet to get more current information, stuff from my security system, the list goes on. Also though, external compute. I might want to be able to tell it about certain functions that exist, so it can go and call another API to go and schedule a trip for me, go and log my paid time off, whatever that might be. I want to be able to tell it about that. I want it to have a memory. If I want to be able to chat, then hey, I give it a prompt, it gives me an output. Then I want to be able to give it a follow-on question to that. This has none of that by default. It's a prompt, it's an output. If I then give it another prompt, it has no idea about that previous output. So I would like it to have a memory. Maybe that's I have to, with my new prompt, send it my previous prompt with its output it gave me. But that's a facility I want. I might want to be able to modify the behavior, i.e., how is it actually responding in what format? I want you to output in a table. I want you to explain it to me like I'm 6 years old. Whatever that might be, I want to be able to modify how it responds. And I might want to chain things together. And when I talk about chaining, it's, well, I want you to do this thing, then do this thing, then do this thing. I want to do these multiple sets of different actions and prompts and different styles to achieve my overall goal. And that's not really an unusual set of things. Think about, as a human being, I have a certain amount of knowledge that I've accrued over my life, and then you can ask me a question. Now, you could give me your prompt, and I can respond in my natural behavior, how I talk based on what I know, which is unlikely to be that useful to you. And so what you might say as well is, John, tell me about this. Here's a book on this topic, or here's access to my mailbox. Go and read through this. And now go and summarize this stuff. Well, I can read the book, I can go through your email, then I could do that. You might say, and I want you to explain this to me as if I'm a middle schooler. So then I would adjust how I explain it to meet that. So that was me asking to change the behavior. Then you ask me a follow-on question. Well, I remember what you asked me previously, so I have that context so I can continue that. You might ask me to do multiple things. So as a human being, we have all of that. And so how do we think about filling those gaps when I have this API that only lets me prompt and then get some output? And there are a number of different capabilities we have around this, but for the most part, they boil down to 2 or 3 core concepts. So think about the idea of other data. Well, so I've got some other data over here. If I want it to be able to use it, we have to add it into the prompt. And you'll hear this term called retrieval augmented generation. Very fancy term for saying we're going to add some data that we're retrieving from somewhere to let you generate stuff off of it. So, hey, I want you to summarize my emails. Here's a list of the emails that are pertinent to that. It can go and get that maybe through Microsoft Graph, maybe I'm going to SharePoint, maybe it's in a database somewhere, and we'll talk a little bit more about how the details of that really work. But that's a huge area, adding additional data in that's maybe newer, that's pertinent to what we're asking it to do. We may include examples of the type of response we want it to give. This is called few shot prompting. I might describe functions that are available. I might want to give it additional prompts to describe how I want it to act. So this is maybe the user prompt, but what I can add into here is the idea of a system prompt. And that's where I may specify certain rules. You are a helpful AI assistant. You should never be rude. If you don't know the answer, say whatever you want it to say. So I can guide how I want it to act, and then here's the user's prompt that they typed in. If there's different functions available that it should be allowed to ask me to call on its behalf, well, the description of those functions I could add in to the prompt, say, hey, these functions are available to you if you want me to go and call that for you. And all of this is called prompt engineering. It's really just a fancy term for, hey, I'm going to change the prompt to make it behave the way I want to do to meet my end result. I might even include that idea of the memory. So remember, what's going to happen now is I have some application, and the application is what's really calling the API. So the application has the prompt and it calls the API and it gets the response back. But what I could also now do is when I get that response, hey, I'll include it back into here. So this is how I get memory. So we can start to add in all of these things to make it more human and make it behave exactly what we want to do. And this is all background so you understand those things have to be provided to give us this nice experience where, hey, back to my terrible, terrible story over here. Can you add eating a pizza? And it's going to know the memory. And notice it's saying, absolutely, let's add pizza into the mix. So now it's going through and it's modifying. It has context. It knows what it was doing before. It has that memory to let it now go and do other things. And I actually now want to read it because it's talking about pizza, but I'll do that afterwards. Great. That's the core of everything we're doing. Now, how do we actually start using it in the various environments? So OpenAI trained the model, say GPT-4, in Azure, but we don't then all use the same instance of the model. What happens is they copy it. So this completed model gets copied. So this is taken over here, and it's copied to many, many different places. So it's copied here and over there. And I can think about why do I want different copies? We'll realize there might be different environments it has to run in. There might be regulatory requirements. There might be data sovereignty requirements. I need it in certain countries. It could be geo. It could be just for scale. I can't meet every single inference request in one cluster. I want to think about latency. I want them close. And latency can actually mean two things when it comes to these GPTs. Yes, there's a distance thing, but also it comes to that scale. It takes time to think and perform these operations. I might want the ability to have a certain amount of provisioned capacity for my inferences for my critical app. So I want to reduce the latency of the inference. That's what you hear about things like provision throughput unit, a PTU. which is, hey, I want to provision this amount of GPU capacity for this model, so I reduce the latency of those responses. And so that's why we say all these different instances exist all over the place. So now, I'm not going to be able to just draw it all the way up. We have different models of GPT available to us in different environments, and this line is going to go up and up and up and up and up. I'll try to keep adding to this line. But we now have GPT available to us. Fantastic. We have the ability to send a prompt and get a response. So how do we use this? What are our options for actually using these? And I want to start with copilots. Now, remember, all of those different things, at heart, a copilot is an orchestrator. It knows about certain data. It knows about certain functions. It knows, hey, this is what I want to add to the prompt. This is what I want to do with the response from the model and maybe reformat it and then give it to the user. So it's really providing all of those different functions and access to different data based on the particular service it is in. And that's what gives me a unique copilot. It's primarily, hey, what data am I going to pull from to add to the prompt? What are the different functions that I may want to tell the model it can call to get additional data and do other stuff? And what is the type of interaction, what instructions might I give it on how I want it to act? That really is the primary thing. Beyond that, they don't modify, they don't retrain the GPT. It's the GPT that just exists. So let's try and do this using a little bit of a walkthrough and a decision matrix. So we're going to start here. And the first real Copilot, I think was GitHub Copilot. And that's where all of this really kind of started. So I might say, okay, well, do I need development help? I'm a developer, I'm in a developer environment. Well, yes, I need this type of help. So the logical solution here is going to be GitHub Copilot. And the idea here is what happens is we have our prompt. And obviously, very commonly, this has got some portion of code as well. And what GitHub Copilot does is going to interact, obviously, with the model. So it's constantly going to go and talk into our GPT with the prompt and get a response back. But the functionality this enables is way beyond just, yes, it can generate code. It can also go and generate documentation. Here's my code, document it. Here's my code, go and add comments to describe it. Here's my code, go and create a test plan. You can do all of these things and more. But think about migration scenarios. I've got some legacy mainframe system. I can tell it, hey, I have this legacy mainframe system. Here's this old code. I would like to move this to a modern PaaS platform written in C# or Python, whatever you want to do. It can do that. So think of those migration scenarios. It can help. Hey, I need to help integrate this code into this messaging platform, service bus, MQ, whatever I want to do. It can help do those things. And it's not even a specialized coding model. It used to be. GitHub Copilot now just uses GPT because it's that good at coding as well. And so if I'm a developer in a dev environment, GitHub Copilot is typically going to be that key solution there that I'm going to want to leverage. Okay. I'm not a developer. I don't want to use it for development tasks. Oh, wrong arrow. There we go. So, no. I would now bring it to the idea of, well, do I want a solution for my knowledge workers in Microsoft 365, in Dynamics, in one of those solutions that has a specific Copilot 4 type offering? So, worker solution for, I'm going to just write M365, but it could be Dynamics. And there's a huge number of those Copilots available. And so now we'll say, well, yes, I want to help my people use those types of solutions. But before we go any further with the actual solution, I'm going to say, does it need any customization beyond what it can do out the box? And for right now, we'll just say no. I don't require any customization. So the solutions here is going to be those Copilot 4. M365. Dynamics. For sales, for service. You'll see all these different Copilots. So they're designed to work with a particular service. And remember, the interactions here is I, as the user, am working in some context. I'm working on some PowerPoint or some opportunity. I'm in my mailbox, whatever that might be. So the context is me interacting with it. And I have certain data that I have access to. Now, in an office world, this will be accessed via Microsoft 365. And remember, this Copilot is really acting as the orchestrator. So when I ask it to do something, hey, summarize all the emails from my manager over the last 2 days, what the Copilot is doing is it goes and talks to the data, gets the relevant information, brings it back, adds it to the prompt that it then goes and sends to the large language model. And that's the key part it's doing. So it's just interacting with the GPT and it gets the response back. Now, the important part is when it's interacting with that data, it's acting as the user's context. It can't access anything the user can't access. It's using constrained delegation. So I've authenticated, and then the Copilot, the orchestrator, acts as me. So I can't accidentally go and get access or get data returned that it gets sent to the large language model that it's added in that I don't have access to. I already have access to it. And then the prompt engineering is used to make instructions better so I get quality responses. So then it's creating the prompt that actually then goes. So the system prompt functions. You can ask me to go and get you extra data from Microsoft 365 or from Dynamics or from this security plugin for Copilot for security, etc., etc. It's all just different sets of data, different instructions on things it can call, how I want it to behave, that gets sent and returned. Now, this is a point of concern for a lot of organizations today. Now, it's acting as the user. The Copilot cannot access anything the user couldn't already access. But as a human being, I may not be that great at finding stuff I have access to. This is going to be very good at finding anything that's pertinent to what it believes is going to help answer and give a quality response. Behind the scenes, very often now it creates something called a semantic index. Now you'll hear about vector embeddings. And what this does is if you think about natural language, I can use the same word to mean maybe potentially different things. And many words can mean the same thing. Dog, mutt, wolf maker. I don't know many names for a dog. But they're different names that are the same thing. And what the semantic index does is it converts the data into these multi-dimensional arrays that represent the meaning of the data, which makes it very easy to find things even when using natural language. And so this can go and find stuff that maybe I would never find. So this is not a weakness of the copilots or large language models, but it could absolutely be that I as an organization have not done a very good job of my data governance. I have not tagged data accordingly. I do not have good data leakage prevention. I've not set the permissions correctly. And this is why you'll see a lot of organizations are now getting concerned about these copilots, because they will go and find data that the organization didn't realize was open to all employees or this group of employees. And this is where, if I am concerned about this is where you would think about using something like Microsoft Purview. So Microsoft Purview is the solution that will go and look at your data. And there's even special functionalities now in Purview. It will show me how AI apps is using my organizational data. It will find where my sensitive data is and suggest labels and suggest protection policies, suggest permissions. It will find that unlabeled data and sites being referenced by, for example, Copilot for Microsoft 365. It can find non-compliant and unethical use of AI interactions against your data. It has compliance assessment templates. So there are solutions to help me solve if I don't have fantastic data governance and labeling. Again, this is not a Copilot issue, but Copilot will enhance any weaknesses I have in my data governance and labeling and protection, because it's going to go and find that data very, very easily. And so if I just need a solution for various types of workers, knowledge workers, whatever that might be, and I don't need customization, hey, Copilot for whatever, if it exists, is probably going to be the right solution. Now, even on the internet, remember you have the Bing chat. If I'm a home user, I can do Copilot Pro. And you'll see a little toggle box. If I'm in an organization, I'll see a toggle box that says web. So that's going to perform internet searches. It will analyze web pages and bring that to me. If I toggle it to the work option, well, then it's going to search the intranet. It will find my chats. It will find my emails. It really behaves a lot like the Copilot for Microsoft 365 chat. So I can do that all from a nice web interface. Okay. But I said no to customization. What if I do want to customize stuff? So I need customization. We go over here. Yes, I need customization. So now there's many different types of people in an organization. I have my developers, I have my knowledge workers, and obviously they're comfortable with different levels of programming, of changing things. So maybe initially, well, do I want a low code or maybe no code, text-based? So I don't need multimodal, I don't need images and video, it's just a text-based set of interaction. And I really want it as a SaaS solution. I don't want to be managing a bunch of back-end infrastructure to do various things. Okay, so now my arrow, yes, I want that. That sounds really good. So this is where you're going to get into Copilot Studio. Let's pick another color, do this one. So Copilot Studio is there to do these things. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. So this is all about the idea of creating my own sets of capability to meet my requirements. It's a fully managed service. It is no to low code types capability. It used to be Power Virtual Agents. If you ever use Power Virtual Agents, basically it was rebranded, but then they added in the magic of generative AI, which transforms Not just the types of output it can create and the interactions, but it can also change what I have to do to light up various types of scenario. So it's got a broader mandate than what it used to have. And it really can do two different things. So we start off with the idea. The first thing it can do is I can create a custom Copilot. So forget about anything else I have. I want to just create a custom Copilot. Now within the custom Copilot, there's a number of different elements to that. Now if we jump over, let's go and find my custom Copilot area. Now straight away when I go to it, it's telling me, hey, Power Virtual Agents is now Microsoft Copilot Studio. So it's telling me about that rebranding. But I can go to Copilots, and I've created one already, but I could say, hey, I want to go and create a new Copilot. And it's asking me for a name. So I'm going to call it MS Copilot. It's got language. And notice what it's asking me for. Enter a website. So from here, I can just enter any website I want. It has to be publicly accessible, but I can also hook this into SharePoint, OneDrive, and files that I can update. It's giving me kind of a simple option, but I can do edit advanced options down the bottom. But initially, it's just saying, look, give me a website, and I'm going to create a Copilot that would work off of that. It will use Bing to go and search the website. But you can see here, I could go and select different icons, types of solution I want, schema names. But I would go and enter my website. So let's say Microsoft.com. Create. And it will now go and it's setting up that Copilot for me. Now, if I go back over just to my base environment, and I already created one, so I'm just going to save a bit of time. Walking through all the capabilities, sure. Now, to get started previously, we would have to create topics. So a topic is some single turn conversational thread between the user and the Copilot that I would create an answer to based on the specific utterance. So I would create a topic. Now notice I could do from blank up here. And from blank means I have to give it all of the different phrases and all the different ways they might ask about it. But the other thing I can now do, if I go just leave that, I can create a topic based on a description with Copilot. So I can use Copilot to create the description to call Copilot. And here, I give it a name, look up documentation, and I just tell it what I want it to be able to do. Let the user search documents for answers. And I hit create. And what that's now doing is based on that topic, it's created some phrases. So look at the phrases that it created. If it sees any of these, and there's more on the scroll bar, it will now call the next set of actions. And here I could enter particular questions. And there's a whole set of different capabilities. There's even advanced things. I can call HTTPS requests. I can send an event. I could have an adaptive card presented to them. So I still have all these capabilities to interact with the user and call different things and do various things. I have all of these topics. And that's great. But I don't even have to do that now, because what we also have is generative AI. So with generative AI, I can use the topics a lot less. Now notice here it's got my website. So this will go and pull information using Bing. It's up to 2 levels down, if I remember correctly, if we look at the help. Make sure it's external, because it's got to be found by Bing. Don't use sites with forms or comments because this could obviously reduce how good it's going to be. And 2 levels of depth. So I can give it multiple public websites, but I could also add in SharePoint, providing I've got authentication enabled or OneDrive, or I could directly upload files. And if I directly upload files, well, then these will go and get stored into my Dataverse, whatever my Dataverse limit is. And with that, it's done. Like, I can just do this, and what it's doing is it's using these generative answers. And I've got this little test Copilot area down here, and I could ask it a question. How can I reboot Windows 11? And so what it's now doing is it's using Bing to go and search the Microsoft documentation, and it's giving me an answer. Okay, what about Windows 10? Now, I didn't say, how do I restart Windows 10? I just said, what about? So it's given me memory. Let's really challenge it. What about Windows Vista? I'm sorry. Can't help you with that. Can you try rephrasing, or please get a better operating system? It's basically what it's saying. But we can see what we're doing with the custom copilots is we can bring in a whole set of different things. So we have the generative AI, and what we can do is with the custom copilot, and when we turn on the generative AI is interacting with the model. So it is going to send the stuff we're sending. It's driving me nuts, it keeps doing that. It is sending to that GPT model and getting responses back. Just keep drawing that line up and up and up. But what I can add to it, remember, is I'm going and adding in, well, public, web. I'm adding in SharePoint or OneDrive. I can add in files that I can upload to my Dataverse. I can define topics if I want to. And there's still going to be times I want to drive certain behaviors and maybe bring up cars and drive certain behaviors, but I don't have to do as many things as I used to have to do. So still have the topics. But I might want it to be able to do other things beyond just adding in these additional types of data. So, and just to be very clear, this might be one reason I use a custom Copilot over Copilot for X. I want to use data from somewhere that is not native to any of those solutions. So I just want to create a help chatbot for my software. Maybe my help documentation is in my SharePoint site, it was on the public site, or maybe it's in a file, a PDF document. Well, I could just go and add it to my custom Copilot, and now I can make it available. But what if I want to enable it to do other things? Well, I also have the ability to define actions that I can add into here. Now, there's a whole set that are built in, and I can also create custom ones. And there's other elements to this. But one of the really nice things is if I was using these actions, before I would have to create a topic. I'd have to create a topic to say, well, if it's this utterance, now go and call this action. I don't necessarily have to do that. So if we go and look back over again, if I go and look at actions over here, I already added an action, but I can just do create. Now, it's showing me a whole set that are kind of built in. There's forecast for today, get a row, that there's other ones I can have here. I can create a brand new flow. So one of the things I can absolutely have in here is I could go to Power Automate, create a new custom connector, and do anything I can do in Power Automate. So it's nice low code, call any existing REST API I have, do various things. And once I create this custom flow, it would now be available here as an action. So I've got all these different types of actions, or I can create a new one. I could upload a new skill. Again, I can create that new flow. So I have all of these abilities. And when I do this, if I go and look at the MSN weather, for example, one of the things we'll notice, and what's really important, is this model description. Get the forecast for the current day in the specified location. Now, why this model description is so important is that currently, to be able to use this, what I would really need to do is go to my topics and then create a topic based on those utterances to call that new action. But if in generative AI, I go and turn on dynamic chaining, what this is now going to do is automatically find the different plugins that exist. It will look at that model description. And now if I go and look at my topics, there's a whole bunch of new topics. I notice a lot of them are dynamic chaining. And there's ones, for example, on unknown intent. So this, if it's not sure what, this is its fallback action on what it's going to go and do. But now with this, based on that description of the model, it will automatically call that action if it thinks it's the right thing to do. So what is the weather today in, I don't know, New York? And one of the nice things when I'm turning on this dynamic chaining, you get this little icon up here. This lets me see exactly what it's doing. And so today in New York, there will be rain, but it's showing me the log. And what it did is it called get the forecast for today. Because I gave it a location, it was able to just go and leverage that automatically. Then there was a whole set of outputs from there. There's even more data that I could have got if I'd have requested for that within it. So the key point here is this gives me this massive amount of power to go and do many, many different things without really coding anything. So this is called a low code, but thus far, this has mainly been a no code type environment. Then there's also things like entities, which are real world subjects I want the natural language to understand and use particular information from. I could go and add my own entities. When I think about, well, how can I use this? Well, if I actually go and go back to my little model. So this is my overall Copilot right here. There's various sort of settings around it. But I've got publish. So if I go to publish, I publish the model. And then, well, there's all these different channels that I can deploy it to. Teams, a demo website, a custom website, Facebook, Skype, Slack, GroupMe. Depending on different solutions I have in my environment, I can interact with SMS. So once I have my custom Copilot created, what I would then go and do is I deploy it, and I can deploy it all over the place. So again, Teams might be super popular, Slack, Facebook, Telegram. I mean, the list goes on. There's many different places, your own custom site. And I can enable authentication, remember, for these, depending on types of data I want to be able to get to. But now I've created my complete own Copilot based on my data, based on actions. It might be my own API. I have a RESTful API that I went and created just that little custom connector for, so I could go and call the action that it would know when to call. Very, very powerful things that I can make available in a lot of different ways. Now, for the licensing of this, I'm not a licensing person, but basically you buy a capacity pack of messages a month. I think it's packs of 25,000 messages, and I stack those. And then I can look at, well, how many messages am I actually using to make sure I stay compliant. So that's at a per tenant level. There is also a per user license, but that's $0. That just controls, I have to have the per user license assigned to me to be able to use the Copilot Studio. So it's not a money thing. It's to just control who's creating the Copilots to go and consume those various messages. The users leveraging these that I make available, they don't have to have any license applied to them. But obviously, they're going to go and use up those messages. Now, I said Copilot Studio can do two things. So one of them was, custom Copilots. But the other thing is I can extend a first-party Copilot. So this is where, hey, I have my Copilots. I'm in Teams. I'm in M365 primarily, is where I commonly use this today. I just want to add some additional functionality. So I can do all of this stuff. And I'm really deploying it into there. So I have all the same capabilities, but I'm taking the stuff it can already do, and I'm just supplementing it with maybe some additional actions, some additional sets of data, so it can do some other stuff. Now, when I do these extending a first party, if I have Copilot for M365, that includes the license to use Copilot Studio to extend and do the light features around typically conversational experiences in Teams. So that's licensed a little bit differently. But what if I want to do more? What if I don't want just the low code solution over here? I want to have multimodal speech and images and video, and I want to call multiple models. Maybe I want to do more complex chaining. I want more control over how the responses come and the functions I called. Well, if I don't want this sort of low-code solution, so I'm going to say no, then I get into the idea of, okay, well, do I want pro code based in the cloud? I want to run the models in the cloud. So now if the answer to this is yes, let's give myself a bit more space. This is where we get into, it's really Azure AI Studio. Now, I say Azure AI Studio. There's also, and I'm sure you've heard about, Azure OpenAI Studio. That's specific to the OpenAI models, those GPT, the ADA for my embedding, etc. A lot of the functionality is very, very similar though. And so the idea here is now I have complete control. I pick the models I want to use. I have complete control over the system prompt I send it. I have complete control over the memory. I have complete control over that retrieval augmented generation of where am I getting that from? Am I using Azure AI Search? Am I using a Cosmos DB? Am I using PostgreSQL with the embedding models added to that? So now I have complete control. I can use provision compute capabilities. So this is where I think about the pro code type scenarios. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on this because I have separate videos where I talk about using your own data, describing RAG, so I don't want to reinvent. I hadn't shown Copilot Studio before, which is why I went into more detail there. But the point of the Azure AI Studio is I have control over all of those. Now, I've got an OpenAI model deployed, so I'll quickly just show the OpenAI. So again, if I was in Azure AI Studio, I could go and create a project and I could deploy any of these many, many types of models that exist. And there's just a huge number of them. If I look at collections, for example, I could say created by Azure AI. And there's all these different models that I could leverage. There's large language models, there's small language models that are still very, very powerful for specific types of interactions. But I could deploy it and then use these. I already have a deployment. So here I'm using the Azure OpenAI Studio, but it's really got a similar set of capabilities. But what I've got deployed is a GPT-4 And I've got an ADA. ADA is used to create those text embeddings that give us that natural language, nearest neighbor, find data based on semantic meaning, not based on the exact words. And then you have a playground. So I can do chat. Now within here, straight away, you see things like, well, chat templates, ways you want it to act. You'll see straight away there's examples in here where I can go and change the configuration. So there's parameters. How creative do I want it to be? So I have temperature, I have top P. Generally, you only do one of these at the same time. Current token counts that I'm leveraging. But I could also go and add in additional data that I want to use. So if I do add different user assistant type interactions over here, can add my own data. Where is it? So this is all about retrieval augmented generation. And this lets me test those interactions. So if I think, what can I do with the Azure AI Studio? I have complete control. So from here, I completely can drive that system prompt, how I want it to behave. So I manage all of that. I can call things like Azure AI Search. Now, I don't have to use Azure AI Search. It's just Azure AI Search, I think RAG, is very powerful for that retrieval augmented generation. Now, I absolutely could just directly hook in with RAG to things like Cosmos DB. I could hook into Postgres. There are other databases that support vectors. Absolutely, I don't have to use Azure AI Search at all. But one of the really nice things that Azure AI Search does, and I've got the data it's talking to and embedding, is it actually has a hybrid search. So yes, it does that embedding, that vector-based search defined based on the multidimensional arrays, the semantic meaning of the nearest neighbor to what I'm asking. But it also does a lexical search based on specific words, which is useful if I'm looking up product names or part numbers. But then it does a hybrid, it merges and finds the top results of both. Then it does a semantic re-ranking, which is similar technology to what Bing does, to say, well, okay, well, now out of these results, which is the most relevant to what I was asked? And then it will score them and only return the ones that are the very most accurate and related to the question I asked. And that's really important because remember what this is now doing. So if I think about the Azure AI Search, what I love is this hybrid search and the semantic re-ranker. Well, this then goes and talks to the GPT, to the large language model, where I pay for tokens. I pay for the number of input tokens. So I don't want to return a whole bunch of data that's not that relevant. So I'm going to pay to send it. I'm going to waste money. I'm going to pollute the quality of the answer back because garbage in will be garbage out. So that hybrid search and that semantic re-ranker is really powerful to not just find the best, but it will only return the most relevant info. So I'm not wasting tokens, sending junk that will muddy the answer and waste my money. So that's why that's such a useful component. But absolutely, I don't have to use that. There are many, in fact, nearly every database now is adding some kind of embedding capability because of retrieval augmented generation, ways to go and hook into that. So I can customize the system prompt. I could call multiple models. I can hook into other types of API capabilities that I want to go and call. I can tweak all of the different parameters. So when I talk about that system prompt, I can also change all of the parameters, that temperature, how within the probability range I want it to be. So I could be more creative or less creative. I have complete control. And when I talk about interacting with the GPT, remember what I actually create in Azure AI Studio is a model instance. And that's where I could also optionally add things like provision throughput units if I have the critical type of generative AI and I want to remove as much latency as I can in it generating those inferences, those tokens back, Or if I have provision capacity, it's not that pay as you go where I'm battling with other people. I have a certain amount of compute capacity provision for me. I'm going to reduce those latency interactions. So if I want sort of all of the power of the pro code, hey, Azure AI Studio and creating those things. Now, one thing I will stress though is yes, I can manually create the system prompt. I can manually tweak all those parameters. I can manually hook into the different search services. I can manually hook into the models and change the way I write my code. Because yes, I have the playground, but eventually I'm going to write an app that calls APIs to do all of this stuff. This is just helping me write my app, but then my app still has to go and talk to all of these things to make the work actually happen. And I may most likely not want to create the wheel every time I want to do that. Now, what did we talk about? This Copilot really was, it was an orchestrator. It managed the prompt. It managed the interaction. It managed going and talking to the data. Now I'm writing my own app, but do I really want to have to define all of the different interfaces for the different models, for the different data I might want to pull for the different prompting, calling different external APIs, chaining multiple different steps together? I probably don't want to do that. So while Azure AI Studio is fantastic for creating the models and experimenting and tweaking what I want, most likely I'm going to want to use an orchestrator to abstract away some of the details. And really what this orchestrator is going to do, I'm going to create a particular set of configuration that's going to end up creating an agent. So I'm creating an agent that does a specific task. Now, there are multiple orchestrators available. I'm just really going to talk about two. So one of the big ones right now is LangChain. And this is, again, I'm a developer. There's a set of code I download, I install it on my machine, I develop against this, and then I leverage this when my application is running. But this has a number of different components. So what I can do within here is it has wrappers, for example, around the models. So if I think I want to call this, well, it has the models defined and it has a wrapper. And what this means is I don't have to worry about the specifics of every different type of model interaction that there is. It's doing a lot of that work for me. That's still GPT going further and further up. There's different types of customization of the behavior I want from the model, i.e. the system prompt. Well, what this has is prompt templates that I leverage. Remember that retrieval augmented generation? Well, it has a concept of indexes. Now, these indexes actually do a number of different things. So it's got something called a document loader. So that could be from file storage, web content, databases. So there's a loader component. But it also has a component of text splitting. And then it actually has the vector database interaction. So all of these things are about that retrieval augmented generation, but really nice capabilities to make it usable. And then it does the retrieval. It has the ability to talk to agents. So if I think about an agent, typically it's going to be talking to an API, but it might be decision making. So from here, it can go and talk to an agent, which is going and talking to some API I want over here. It adds the concept of memory. And so I get that contextual continuation of the ability to have just a conversation with the bot without me having to write the code to do that. And really the big deal, what I then create is chains. And the chain is just, well, you do this bit of work, then call that agent, then call the model to do this. So I'm chaining together different units of functionality. And that's really what LangChain is all about. So I could imagine the user types in a prompt. I map it to a certain prompt template, I send it to the model. I get that response back. Now I call a certain API with the response. Now I take that response, now I combine it with a different prompt template, explain it to me like I'm 10, and send it to the large language model and get the response. Now return it to the user. So I'm chaining together 3 different things that each of those were a certain unit of work. That's the chain in LangChain. It's letting me create these sequences of actions that it's going to perform. Then there's output parsers. There's all different sets of things that it can do. So LangChain, super powerful. Another one we have that's a Microsoft created is something called the Semantic Kernel. Now I can really think of the Semantic Kernel in 3 different buckets. There are plugins. So this might be, hey, I want to do retrieval augmented generation. It might be I want to run some kind of automation. So you'd hear this called tools or functions. Then I have the idea of planners. So planners is the function calling. So that's calling a function. And then I have the idea of a persona. And a persona is really just a set of instructions plus using some plugins. And then this goes and does the various callings to the large language model and gets you the responses back. So that's the goal of what these do. And these planners are actually really powerful. It uses the concept of function calling, where it just gives the function detail to the model and it works out the detail of what it needs, rather than me having to describe using a prompt-based approach of every single thing that uses a lot of tokens. It costs me money. So the semantic kernel is doing very similar things to LangChain. The goal is to abstract away some of the detail and provide building blocks so that I can with minimal code, have these more sophisticated sets of capabilities, have the memory, have that context, have the hooking into data, customize the prompts, call different types of functions, make them available to the solutions. Now, there are others. Prompt flow is another one that's part of, I think, the Azure AI Studio natively. OpenAI has the OpenAI Assistance API, which is basically provides a thread, which is a history, and then a call of a function, running in their cloud. There's also AutoGen. I guess I should quickly talk. So if this is an agent, I'm creating one agent. What AutoGen does is, imagine I have multiple agents. So I've created lots of different agents. AutoGen enables the agents to talk to each other to achieve a more complicated task. So you might see AutoGen. And I'm really just telling you these names just so you understand what they're doing. So if you hear the term AutoGen, oh, there's multiple agents that work together. Oh, LangChain or Semantic Kernel. Oh, they're orchestrators that I, as a pro code developer, would use to give me some of the more advanced capabilities on top of a model, like retrieval augmented generation, like customizing the prompt, like calling functions, like adding in the memory. So that's why you'll see those terms leveraged in the environment. And I guess finally, no, I don't want to do pro code in the cloud. Running out of room. But maybe I want to do pro code locally. I.e., a small language. I can't run a large language model on my PC. I can't do that. But what I can do is run some of the small language models. And again, these are getting really powerful. And so here the solution could be Windows AI Studio. And this is enabling me to interact with locally running. So this is on my PC, these small language models, Microsoft Phi 2, Meta Llama 2, Mistral. I can run these locally on my machine, experiment, and do various different things. And that, I guess, is my summarization. I guess it got pretty big. The whole point, fundamentally, is we have a large language model. GPT is very popular today. That to make it useful, I want to change the way it responds, prompt engineering. I might want to tell it about functions it can ask me to call on its behalf. And I want to give it additional data. Boils down to that. So if I'm a developer and I want help in my development, my migration from legacy to modern, GitHub Copilot is the perfect solution for that. It integrates very nicely with my development tools. If I just want to browse the web, there's Copilot, there's Bing Chat, there's Copilot Pro if I'm a home user. Work, I'll see the little work, which will then go and hook into my intranet, my mail. It's acting a lot like Microsoft 365 Copilot. If I'm a worker solution working in Microsoft 365 or Dynamics or any product that has a Copilot for, and I don't need to customize it, we'll just use the Copilot. It's doing all of the work to hook into the relevant data, to customize the prompts. I don't need to know anything. I just interact with it. It knows the context I'm currently in and will do the right thing. Well, I want to custom. I need to add some additional capability. Well, then we have Copilot Studio. So it can extend, typically Microsoft 365, go and add some new capabilities in some external APIs, maybe some additional data. Great. I want to create my completely own custom Copilot where I can hook into my own data, be it public web, SharePoint, OneDrive, files I upload. I can then hook in different types of actions, built-in actions. I can create my own flows to call other APIs and do different things. It's all generative AI based commonly today, so I don't even have to create manual topics for most of the things. It will work out the right things, and I can go and deploy it Teams, Slack, Facebook, Telegram, SMS if I've got the right additional services, custom websites. Copilot Studio is phenomenal. And as you saw, it's no code a lot of the time, but even in the worst case, it's low code. No, I want to be a pro developer. Azure AI Studio lets me go and stand up the right models. It lets me go and experiment with different parameters. It lets me experiment with hooking in the different data. Azure AI Search, I love because of the hybrid search and the semantic re-ranker to get the most relevant data, to only send the relevant data, to only spend that money. But then I still have to go and write my app to hook into the API that model instance is exposing. Well, I probably don't want to do all of that, so there are these orchestrators out there. LangChain, Semantic Kernel, two of the big ones that make it very easy to abstract away some of the details with very small amounts of code. I'm customizing the prompt. I'm adding in my own data. I'm telling it about functions it can call. It's adding in the memory capabilities, so I have that ongoing contextual. AutoGen, hey, I've got multiple different agents doing different things. Let them work together to achieve way more complicated tasks. And if I just want to develop locally, Windows AI Studio can help me do that and run the actual model on my PC using the GPU I have in there. So hopefully that explains what they are and maybe that very basic flow. It will be pretty obvious to you what I'm trying to achieve and what the right tool would be. Again, I just went through a decision matrix to show where they kind of fit and layer on. But I hope that helps. As always, till the next video, take care.